The biggest thing you gave me was time.
I've always been a proponent of do the job, do it well.
When you're a family, everyone in the family has to be treated with respect.
I couldn't have done this without you. Coming here to K-State, you've been my confidant and in the room with me.
I want to know who you really are, right? You can put whatever you want on paper, but that doesn't really matter.
His teachers, they meet the learner wherever he is.
They don't care what you know.
They know how much you care.
Be aggressive. Let's win. Here we go.
It's quite an honor to be able to have you on, so I really want to say thank you there.
Oh, my pleasure. And Van, you've always looked for leadership roles and AFCA and all those different things we've done, NCAA. And so when you reached out, I've got some time on my hands, so I was happy to join you.
Yeah, and I got a few buddies who are in the coaching world. I told them that you would be on, and they were like, "Well, when can I access it? When is it?" So there's some people out there who can't wait for the knowledge that you're going to be able to share with us. But we'll jump right in, and you know, jumping right in is me asking you to take us through your journey from being a student athlete to being a head coach of a Power 5 program. What was that journey? And you can add in or leave out whatever you'd like, but what was that journey like for you? Please share that with us.
Absolutely. I'll go kind of fast, kind of high level. Anything you want to ask on, we can stop and drill down. I'm actually writing a book about a lot of these things, so it's fresh in my mind. So I was a student athlete at Stanford University. But even before that, my dad was a football coach. So I lived the life of a coach's kid, moving around from Southern California to Northern California, Oregon, Arizona, and Michigan, all before my junior year of high school. So moved around a bunch. Always said I was not going to coach football. Had an opportunity to accept a scholarship to Stanford University to play receiver. And that's kind of where it really started. I didn't know at the time because I was not going to coach football. I wanted to get into asset allocation and get into the financial world. But, you know, I was very fortunate, you know, especially with all the coaches moving around. I had one offensive system my entire 5 years, redshirted, then played for 4 years. Played for the first staff was Denny Green, Ron Turner, Brian Billick, Tyrone Willingham. My dad was on that staff, just an amazing staff. Yeah. And then the next staff I had was Bill Walsh and Terry Shea and Mike Wilson, who played for the 49ers, was my receivers coach. So the same West Coast system for 5 years. So I became one of those guys who's helpful to the coaches, but annoying to his teammates, right. You know, because I'm correcting the receivers sometimes before the receivers coach. Hey, no, that's 12 yards. You know, hey, you're in the slot on this one. You know, hey, cut your split down. So they annoyingly started calling me Coach Shaw. Very sarcastic. Yeah. Because I was telling them all what to do. Because it was the same offensive system for 5 years, and I was really bothered by it because I was not going to follow my dad's footsteps and become a coach. But as it happens, graduated. Not quite fast enough, good enough to play in the NFL. Thought I was going to get a cup of coffee. Never got that cup of coffee, but got an opportunity to be a coach's assistant up in Western Washington. And I thought, let me do this for a year or two before I start real work. And I went up there, and as most coaches will tell you, first day on the grass, you know if you're a coach or not. Yeah. And first day on the grass, that was it. You know. I coached outside linebackers and strong safeties. We played an old school 4x4, you know, so I had the two outside guys. Yeah. Learned a lot about defense. The next year, flipped over to offense and coached tight ends. Learned a lot about the tight end play, which I played receiver, so I learned more about the blocking schemes as well as the passing schemes. And went to Idaho State. I was hired by a guy named Tom Walsh. And a lot of people on the West Coast may know Tom. Brilliant, still kicking. He's still a good man. He reached out to me once this year. I was only there for 30 days because I'd done an internship with the Eagles. So after 30 days there, the Eagles called me. They had a position for me. And that's where my world really changed. I met John Gruden, and got a chance to go to the Eagles, and John Gruden changed my career. He took me under his wing. He beat me up very intensely. I knew the offense, but I didn't know really what was under the hood, and he taught me what was under the hood. So I was able to follow him from the Eagles to the Oakland Raiders back when they were in Oakland. Was hit with him there for 4 years, and we all know this coaching world's a small world. Brian Billick had won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, and the year after they won the Super Bowl, he had a job for me. I coached quarterbacks and receivers with the Baltimore Ravens for 4 years. Sadly, that ended. We were not doing defense. And then I got a good friend of mine, John Morton, who's now with the Denver Broncos. We were, buddies at the Oakland Raiders. Called me and said, "Hey, Jim Harbaugh has been at the University of San Diego." So I went down there, checked it out. Jim and I got along really well. I knew the offense. He's running the same John Gruden offense. So jumped right in, passing game coordinator. We won a national championship my 1 year there. And then I was going to go back to the NFL. But Harbaugh was getting college job offers. And I said, no, I'm not going to stay in college. I'm going to go back to the NFL. And then Stanford called him. I was going to interview him. And I said, hey, that's my alma mater. If you go to Stanford, I'll go with you. He got the job. I came as the offensive coordinator. He turned that thing around. A lot of hard work, going from, they were 1-11 the year before we got there. The year that Jim left, we were 12-1, or 11-1, I should say, from 1-11 to 11-1 in 4 years. And then, he got a job at the 49ers, and thankfully Bob Bowlesby, the athletic director at the time, hired me as the head coach. I had earned enough respect, and all the things people tell you to do is what I did. I wasn't job chasing. I worked really hard on the job that I had through all the bumps and bruises and difficulty. I maintained a good spirit. I coached my guys hard. I recruited really well. The opportunity came. I was interviewed, and I did well enough in the interview to get the job. And now the rest is history. And I was the winningest coach in Sanford football history. Put a bunch of guys in the NFL, a bunch of guys in the grad school too. So we did a lot of great things. And when it felt like, my ride there was done, I stepped out with a lot of grace, a lot of respect for the people that were there. And now we'll see what my next opportunity is somewhere down the road.
Big time, big time. And I again, in this world, you and I, we talked about this before, but in this world, you do things that while they're happening, while they're going on, in terms of the players that you're graduating, the players who are going on to the NFL, the bowl games you play in, you coach in, the championships you win. You never get a chance. You never get a chance to look at that. You never get a chance to take it all in, because you're moving to the next season. You're moving to the next team. You're moving to the next player. You got to develop the next one. And sometimes it's just good to take a moment. Sometimes we're forced into that moment. And for you, I just encourage you to look back at that. You know what I mean? Because you've done some great things. And again, me being in that moment personally myself, it was the time, man, to just know how blessed you are, because you had an opportunity over all these years to coach and meet and impact a lot of great players that we, as we're doing it, you never get a chance to breathe. You never get a chance to breathe it in and realize how wonderful. I don't want to like toot our horns,
Sure.
it's just a cool place. And sometimes you don't get a chance to really realize that until you're in that place that the whole world would say is not a good place. So I'm gonna move to my next question, but I appreciate that answer. But here at Kansas State, and when we talk about core values, we talk about discipline, we can talk about commitment, we talk about toughness, we talk about being selfless. But I want you to reflect on your core values. And when you think about your core values, tell us how they go into you being who you are as a leader.
So, and we can talk about team core values if you want, but like core values for me, it really is only one core value, which is every person I interact with, every group that I coach, every group that I work with, any organization that I join, is to make it better day by day. That's it. Keeping it really simple. Anybody that I can impact, if I can impact that person in a positive way, then I've done my job. If I can impact the players in a positive way, the offense, the whole team, the secretaries, the people who work in the recruiting office, the people who work downstairs or down the hall. If I can focus moment by moment on making all of my interactions as positive as they can be, and sometimes they start negative, but then it's up to me, I believe, to make it a positive.
Yeah.
So if I can do that day by day, you'll look back on a successful career. So that's where I always focus on myself, I think, for guiding me in that way. But I've kept it simple my entire life. Is if I walk in a room, I want to impact everybody in that room in a positive way, and hopefully they'll remember it. And a lot of times we cross paths with people again down the road, and if that first interaction was positive, then the second interaction most likely is going to be positive as well.
Right. So, man, you've been on some unbelievable staffs. You played for unbelievable staffs. But when we talk about leaders, when we talk about the people who have impacted you most, again, man, I'm sure you could go on and on, but who are a couple of leaders, or maybe just one leader, who has impacted you the most? And in your life, in your career, what did that person teach you that you use today as a leader?
So I'm going to give you three players, actually. Three players. One was Ray Lewis. When Ray Lewis was in the building, you knew Ray Lewis was in the building, right? Hey, boy. Just the way that he talks, the way that he interacted with people, that energy that came through his voice, and the fact that every day that he was there, he gave you everything. Every day that he was there, he gave you everything. There's nothing ever held back. And first of all, I appreciated that because, the great ones don't wait for somebody else to start. The great ones started. And I've told this story a million times to people that he wasn't with us during the non-mandatory off season, but the mandatory minicamp, he would show up and the level of the defense would go from 4 to 10, right? He goes to 10 because when your leader, vocal, spiritual, your everything leader is giving you everything, you can't help but give him everything back.
Yeah.
So that impacted me on a daily basis. I told you what my core value was that he rose the level for me. Right. Like, am I doing that? I'm not going to be Ray Lewis. I'm not this Hall of Fame, one of the best top linebackers of all time. But in my position, am I giving everybody everything every day? Number two, I'll give you Andrew Luck. Andrew, I still say probably one of the top 5 greatest football players to ever come through college, NFL numbers, whatever. But for him to do similar to Ray Lewis, and he did it in a much different way, Andrew was the most selfless superstar I've ever been around. He wanted to bring everybody else up, and he hated compliments, right? Because it put all the attention on him. He did everything he could to bring up everybody else and not make himself the center of attention. I'll never forget is when he was on his rise. Harbaugh's last year, the year before I took over. I had him once as the offensive coordinator and then once as the head coach his last year. But his second last year, everybody knew he was the best player in America. He came to me and he said, "Coach, everybody's complimenting me. You don't get to compliment me anymore. You just tell me what I need to work on.
Yeah.
The best player in America telling his coach, just tell me what I do wrong. Just tell me what I need to work on. That's what I need. I don't need any more great throw, great play. I don't need any of that. He said, I'm going to get it from everybody else, but not from you. And that was our relationship to this day. It was that I'm not gonna blow smoke. I'm not gonna pat him on the back. I'm gonna say, hey, you were too deep in your drop. You got to shorten your stride, because he had this big long stride. He'd be back there 11 yards on a 7-step drop. Like, no, you can't be back there, right? So staying hard on his drops, make sure they had great eye discipline. So the great ones love to be coached, right? And that was like, no matter how many games we won at Stanford, I always wanted to say, okay, great. People are going to pat me on the back, but what do I need to work on? What do we need to work on? What didn't we do well? Okay, we won that game, but man, we got lucky because we missed these things.
Yeah.
So that humble leadership that Andrew had was such a great example for me. And the third one I'll give you, Christian McCaffrey. And I like to say this about Christian, it's true to this day. Christian emanates heat. Without speaking a word, you can feel his juice, right? You see him on you watch a game on Sunday, and I'm telling you, this will be the true next year also. You'll see the few times that he does come out, he will not unbuckle his chin strap. He will stand right next to the coach with his mouth guard in, breathing heavy because he's ready to go back in the game, right? Just emanating heat every single day. So that I always look at Christian and say, okay, am I affecting everybody in that way? Am I showing everybody that I'm all in every single day, that I'm pushing myself as much as I'm pushing them? Sometimes as a coach, you tend to get a little bit more distance the longer you become a head coach. But you got to shorten that distance. You got to talk to those guys face to face. They have to feel your energy. They have to know that you're in it with them. And that was with Christian. Christian could be demanding of his teammates because he gave them everything as well. Because he just in the way that he walked and talked, where he ran from drill to drill. The way that he encouraged his teammates. When anybody else made a play, he was the first guy to celebrate with that other teammate. So that heat every single day. So those three guys inspired me as a coach. I could give you some other coaches too, but that was the thing from those players and my dad always says, when you coach great players, they're probably going to learn less from you than you learn from them.
Yeah, and that is amazing, because again, what your dad said, sometimes, when we get that C on our hat, we just believe it is always supposed to go one way. But if you allow it to, and it is supposed to go quite a bit from us to them, but if you allow it to, and I've heard great coaches say that, heard them admit that they learn from those players, because, the nature of the game is that we all have to be continually learning, continually getting better. And these players, if you allow it to, from a coaching standpoint, you can learn from them. Appreciate that. So as a head coach, you've been in a position to where you have had to put people on your bus. And, reading a lot of leadership books, we talk about buses. You talk about your organization being as a bus. When you look to put people on your bus, put people in your organization, what are the things, and you're talking about from a coaching standpoint, but even your support personnel, what are the things you look for that let you know this person is a fit to be around my players, to be in an organization that I'm in charge of?
Well, this is a great question. This is really, really big for me. I think a lot of people make a lot of mistakes in hiring. And when you make a lot of mistakes, you end up firing a lot of people. And I didn't want to fire people, so I took my time. I always took my time when I was hiring somebody. Because I say what the head coach is really, really responsible for, more than anything else, is the environment. Right? We're responsible for the environment. The environment is a result of who's in the environment.
Yeah.
Right. You're hiring adults. You're not going to change adults drastically. They're going to be who they are. So you have to find people, and this is two things for me, basically: personality fit and philosophy fit. Huge, really huge. So when I'm hiring coaches in particular, I like to not just have a one-on-one interview. We do that, but more importantly, I would have a staff interview to where I ask the first couple of questions and get them up on, look at the film that they brought, and then I want the staff to ask them questions, to really talk philosophy and teaching progressions and all those things and seeing if they fit. But sometimes more importantly, I want to see personality-wise, is there a fit here? Right? We're going to work long hours in intense, very intense situations. If we don't get along, on a February, Saturday morning, we really not going to get along when the heat is on and our jobs are on the line.
Right.
So as much as anything, see how do my guys ask those questions, and how does this person we're interviewing respond to those questions? Do they get a little defensive? Are they open to questions and answers and maybe different ways of doing things? Because sometimes those conversations, I'm sitting there, the conversations start taking off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the one, right? Good ideas, meshing with other ideas, not afraid for their stuff to be questioned, open to different things. Maybe they showed our guys something. Oh man, we can incorporate that, right? So the personality fit and the philosophy fit. There's the biggest thing, especially for coaches. I think so many people, I'm going to hire, the hot coordinator, or I'm going to hire, this guy's coached all these All-Americans. He must be a great coach, and they're paying him a whole bunch of money. I'm going to try to steal that guy because he's been a good recruiter. If we don't get along as a staff, first and foremost, our jobs are in jeopardy, right? But second of all, and I'm a firm believer in this, the players can tell if the staff is on the same page or not.
Right. Yep.
If we're not on the same page and we don't respect each other and we're not working together, how in the world can we get these teenagers in early 20s to do what we want them to do? Right? It's similar to parenting. If mom and dad are on the same page, no matter how good the kid is, they're going to find their way to weave between the cracks.
Well, Mama said that I could go.
Yep. Playing one against the other. And it just comes natural to them because they don't feel that firm connection between the coaches. They don't feel that concrete, like, hey, we're on the same page and this is what we want you to do. They don't feel that we have a philosophical connection. And they're like, okay, great. Oh, you're telling me to do this? Okay, we're on the same page. I'm all in. So as much as anything, like the personality and philosophical connections help us coach better because we are a united front as we're teaching and coaching our players. So that's really what I'm looking for as far as the coaches. And now the big thing that head coach can do, right? And I talk about this a lot. It's like, when you're driving on the highway in a lane, like you're constantly doing little self-corrections, right? With the steering wheel, even though you're going straight, it's kind of self-corrections. That's what the head coach has to do. You got to make sure every once in a while that everybody's doing the job that you hired them to do, right? So you're going to make sure, no, hold on a second. No, this is what I hired you to do. This is your job description. That's his job description or her job description, and making sure everybody's in their lane, make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. I say this all the time, like delegation is sanity for the head coach, but as you delegate, you got to be very specific on what you want your staff to do. And if those lines of communication are very clear and open, and you can correct very quickly and directly, now we've got a smooth operation going on. And that's what I always wanted. I want a staff that had interpersonal connections. No matter how difficult it got, we still like coming to work. We still like seeing each other. Man, we just lost 2 or 3 games in a row. Hey, some staffs, everybody's on the phone, trying to talk to somebody else. Hey, it's not going well here. But and there are multiple times in my time at Stanford, we had either really, really tough 2 or 3 losses in a row, and we come back and practice was great that next week. And we found a way to win because we didn't crack, because we were together. We showed the players that the staff is united and we're on the same page. We're going to do whatever help you be successful. And then the players feel that no matter how difficult it is, and they can go out there and perform. So that's a philosophy I have that's proven itself over and over again, but it's not necessarily popular nowadays, right? You know, sometimes you hire the hot coordinator and come in, and now you got staff friction, and you know, next thing you know, somebody's got to get fired, and it's not going well, and somebody's trying to get the head job. Well, the head coach is still there, and all this craziness going on. We're really, you know, you want an environment where everybody wants to walk in the door and come to work.
Yeah, and it's like you said, you know, the players, they are they're scanning the field to find those cracks in the armor. And and if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times, is that's where people, coaches, head coaches, new head coaches, they make the mistake because they don't take their time in hiring the staff. Because sometimes we hire who we know, well, not always the greatest fit for you as a head coach, for your staff. My next question that I have is, you know, in our game, we deal with adversity, right? We deal with, you know, you got injuries. A few years ago, we had COVID, and that was unbelievable. But and you spoke on it in your last response, is that, man, sometimes things just don't go right. And as a head coach, you have to deal with this adversity. Your team has to deal with adversity. Your staff has to deal with adversity. But for you as a head coach, as the leader, how has, in your mind, how has dealing with different adversities, how has those things made you a better leader? And what is it that happens, or that you think should happen to a leader when he's facing adversity?
So a few things for me here. Number one, name the adversity. Just name it, right? Speak it. It's there. Identify it to the staff. Identify it to the players. Don't hide from it. Hey, this is what it is. You know, here's the issue that we're dealing with. Hey, this is what COVID is. This is what we're dealing with. Hey, you know what? We have not played well. You know, we have not played well. And sometimes your fans, the media, whoever else, they have this idea of perfection, right? Where everybody's supposed to be perfect. And you're supposed to just win. That's just not the truth sometimes. So you have to like get that out of the way. Secondly, after naming it, I used to tell my players all the time, like, hey, every successful person has scars. Every successful team has scars. That 2011 team, Harbaugh's last year, going 11-1, we were still pissed off from the previous year, right? We had enough guys. We didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. We had injuries at the wrong time. We played poorly in a couple of games, and we knew we were better than what we put out there. So we carried those scars with us and made us a better team the next year. So there's the idea, since successful people, successful teams have scars, getting scars is okay, as long as you learn from them. You know, oh, we had a big loss. Okay, everybody's going to be mad at us. Everybody's jumping off the bandwagon. The press is talking about how I can't coach and you can't play. Well, let's look back at that game and extract everything we can from it. You know what? And a lot of times the first thing you do is point to the things that I could have done better. That's where you get the players' attention. You know, if you don't do it, they're looking at you like, oh, you're perfect. You know, it's just us that screwed up, right? Yeah. So usually that's the first thing that I say, hey, you know what, man, that timeout early in the third quarter, that was on me. That was on me. That was my fault. I wasted that timeout. We could use that timeout later. But hey, you know what? This third down call, I was trying to do something I shouldn't have been doing. Hey, that was a bad call on my part. You know, so now the guy at the head of the at the top of the pyramid, he just took some blame. So it's going to run downhill now. Okay, I just accepted my faults and the things I need to do better. You need to do this better. You need to do this better. And at the same time, even though you lost a really, really tough game, you point out the things that are positive, right? Like, hey, Johnny, unbelievable catch on third down. Unbelievable catch that kept the drive alive. So while you're naming the difficulties and accepting your difficulties and making sure everybody accepts theirs, you look at positives, because we can now, we learn from the difficult things and get better from those, and we add those to the positives that we want to keep positive. Now, guess what, man? Sometimes we can get on a roll after a difficult loss because we extracted the things we needed to extract from that loss. I'll say this, the first Rose Bowl we went to, my second year as the head coach, we went to Notre Dame, and I'm still pissed off about it to this day. 2012, still pissed about it. We had 4 downs at the 1-yard line to win the game, and I'll put all the money in my bank account that we scored on that first play. The replay official didn't replay it. On the field, they said it wasn't a touchdown, right? It's a different rule now that they replay every single play down there inside the 1. And this was the game that actually was one of the ones that changed that. That was mandatory to replay those things upstairs, but they didn't replay it. I ran into the guys in the truck a couple years later. They're like, "Coach, we scored on first down." Right? It was one of those things.
Yeah.
We scored on first down, and then Stephon Taylor, running back, swears that he scored on 4th down. I didn't see it because it was under the pile. He's a coach. I was across. They pulled me back. So we lost that game. Also in that game, there was a phantom whistle, right? Messed up with one of our plays. So all this craziness in one game. That losing that game in that way catapulted us to not lose another game the rest of the year, including our first Rose Bowl against Wisconsin. So without that loss in that way, we don't win that Rose Bowl. That loss galvanized us. It made us tougher, made us stronger, and we extracted everything we could from that game. We applied it moving forward. So a game that could have been devastating, a game that could have been, just led the season, which a lot of people were talking about. Excuse me. Oh, they lost Andrew Luck. Oh, they lost Jim Harbaugh. They're not going to be any good now. They can't beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. We came back and went on a run. And I'm saying it's not just me. It was the entire staff. It was all the players. We had great leadership. And they made us say, we're not going to lose another game the rest of the year because we're going to learn from these lessons, and we're not going to repeat those negative things. So the difficulties, the losses, the adversity, name it, accept your part in it as the head coach or as your position coach. Make sure everybody knows what they're doing well and what they need to do better. And if everybody can take that on their shoulders, we can turn that negative into a positive and really start a great run.
Yeah, there was, as you were talking, I was trying to remember, there was Kevin Anderson. Kevin Anderson was on some time ago, and that was one of the things that he talked about being a leader is that you have to be willing to be vulnerable, that you have to be willing to admit you're not perfect, that you have to be willing to admit you made a mistake. A lot of times as coaches, especially after a tough loss, especially when we are going through a rough moment, oh yeah, it's my responsibility to tell everybody what they're not doing. But if you start with yourself, right? If you start with you, like you said, the person at the top of the pyramid, if that person is willing to admit, you know what, I could be better too, then it's easy for everybody else to fall in line. And sometimes you don't even have the head coach, the leader does not have to call those things out because you were willing to call yours out, right? And I think, like I said, when he made that remark, I just heard it again with what you said.
And I'll add this too, and I understand it because there is so much pressure and there's so much media attention that sometimes that becomes difficult, right? Because the media, especially if you have some success, the media puts you on a pedestal and they can't wait to knock you down. Yeah. Right? They can't wait to knock you down. They put you up there. So my advice to young coaches in particular, first-time head coaches, if you have some success, don't let them put you up there. Right? They can put you up there if they want, but don't put yourself up there. Keep reminding yourself that you're a human being, that you have faults, so that when the difficulties come, you're not tumbling down, you're not afraid, to be vulnerable. You're not afraid to come in and say, I made a mistake. I screwed that up. That was a bad call. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Because that's hard to do if you see yourself the way that the media sees you, or the way that this idealized coach that you think that you want to be. It's hard to be honest with yourself, and it's hard to be honest with your team. But if you're not, you can lose them. And as my dad always said, I quote my dad a lot, sometimes when you lose a team, you can't get them back.
Right. Well, you spoke on giving advice, and I would ask you, when you think about the younger coaches and younger support personnel that you've had on your staff, how or what things do you use to motivate those young people? You talked about chasing jobs. You talked about being a young coach in this profession, and the fact that you want to advance. What is it that you do, or what is it that you say to help your young coaches stay motivated, to stay locked in with you, while also encouraging them to grow as well?
First of all, one of my life lessons: learn from everybody and learn from everything. Write things down, keep a book, quotes that people say, ideas that other people have, something that you do that you really like, put that on the side, because you never know, things change. Oh, we used to do this. Oh man, I used to like that. Let me put that down for when I'm in charge, so that you have things. And I went to, I'll say this, I used to go to, the NFL used to have this thing for young coaches in the NFL at the owners meeting, where they would have older head coaches, first-time head coaches, assistant coaches, kind of lecture guys. And I took a lot from those. And from Jim Mora was one of those that, like, he planned things out before he was ever a head coach, just so he would have a ladder, he would have a scaffolding of what he would do as a head coach, so that when it was time, he wasn't making it up as he went along. He learned from the head coaches that he coached for. He learned from the coordinators that he coached under. He had an idea of what they did, but he would extract the things that he liked that they did, and some things that they did he didn't like. He still coached them, but he said, okay, I wouldn't do this, I would do this. So we always had an idea. So for me, it's like, you prepare for the next job. You don't have to chase the next job necessarily. Prepare for the next job while you're doing your job at a high level. Do your job at a high level, but be prepared for the next job. And one of the things I was not great at, just getting to know as many people as possible. That's not necessarily chasing job. That's just kind of expanding your network of people. Go to the convention, meet people, collect cards, go to the speeches, take great notes, and not for show. Take notes of the things that apply to you. I went to some great speakers, watched some great speakers that I didn't take any notes because none of it applied to me, but I just enjoyed it. I went to some speakers and I took 3, 4, 5 pages of notes, whether it was on an offense or a defense or philosophy. So like preparing for that next opportunity on the side while you're doing a great job, because the reputation that you get, sometimes it's unfortunate, sometimes it's decided by other people, but as long as you're before people saying, hey, you know what, this guy works his tail off. Hey, this guy is versatile. He can coach this position or that position. Hey, I trust this guy. He's a great recruiter, but at the same time, he coaches his guys really well. But then also talk to your head coach, your position coach. Say, hey, and one day I want to be a coordinator. That lets your head coach know that you have those aspirations. And maybe if there's certain head coaches, I think, take it seriously and say, hey, they'll give you some leadership opportunities. Hey, you know what? You're in charge of the leadership council. You're in charge of you're our academic liaison. You're in charge of this. So whatever they put you in charge of, you do a great job of, because that speaks volume for how, when you do go try to get another job and somebody calls your head coach, you're like, hey, you know what? This guy, whatever I ask him to do, he does it really, really well. And I trust him, and he works hard, and his players like him. They respond to him. So that's the biggest advice, and everybody says to do a job where you're at. That's the great advice. Do the best job you can where you're at, but you also have to be prepared for the next job. So when that opportunity does show up, you slide right in and hit the road running because you have an idea of how you would do that next job.
So this question is one that I you know, so I'll ask it of some people, but I want to ask it of you. Is that, you know, being a head coach in a great situation, a great university, having a great experience as a head coach, what is something, or I won't say what is something, what is the thing that you're most proud of when you look at your career as a head coach?
I think that I have a bunch of players who played for me, coaches who coached for me, um, administrators that I worked for, people that worked in the office, recruiting office, people that worked other places in the university that still reach out to me and see how I'm doing. You know, because as I said, the most important thing is that environment. And I think at Stanford, we created an environment not only that people enjoyed coming to work, but it was an environment that was conducive to winning. It was a competitive environment. It was a real serious environment, but at the same time, we enjoyed our time together. Even when we pushed each other, even when it was hard, even when we disagreed. You know, Mike Bloomgren was my offensive coordinator. You know, after Pep Hamilton, and Bloomgren would come in my office and say, "We can't do this anymore." And I'm like, "Okay, why?" And he would tell me why. I said, "I disagree." Right. And we would do what Brian Billick used to call scrimmage. Right. He and I were just scrimmaging in the office. And then he would either convince me or I would convince him. And I'd say, "Bet, we're on the same page." Awesome. And you can't be afraid of that scrimmaging sometimes, as long as, once again, you have the right people with the right personalities that have that great mesh that we can disagree and find our solutions. So I'm proud of, thing I'm most proud of is having that environment to where people love coming to work, and we won a bunch of games. But even in the off season, we enjoyed each other and we wanted to be around each other. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, because, you know, still to this day, I'll have former players give me a ring, say, "Hey, coach, what was going on? What's going on? You know, what are you up to?" I get players calling me when they're getting married, players calling me when they have their first kid. Players still calling me after they're done playing for a couple of years saying, "Hey, can you write me a recommendation? I want to go back to grad school." I still say this, I've probably written more recommendations than anybody in America in the last decade, you know, and I went to Stanford. So guys are serious about their education. But I still have, I mean, I think I wrote 5 recommendations in the last, you know, 2 or 3 months for guys that looked and said, "Hey, coach, I respect you. You know me well. Can you write me a recommendation?" Or they put me on their list of people to call as they apply for jobs. So that's what I'm proud of, is that environment made people work hard. It pushed us to our limits. And it was an environment that pushed us to be successful on the field, but it was an environment that coaches, players, administrators, that people wanted to be in that environment. That's what I'm most proud of.
And I, knowing you, knowing what I know about you, I would have imagined that would have been the thing. And I think it's so important for us as coaches to understand how important that is. My final question, and this is, I don't know, this one is a cool one for me, but I'd like to ask you, if you could talk to the younger David Shaw, right, that young dude, right, you could talk to him and get him to listen to you, what would you tell him today that you wish you knew back then, right?
I would say trust your training, trust your faith, you know, because there are going to be some big bumps in the road and you're not going to be sure. But have faith. Have faith. Your faith is going to pull you through. Your work ethic is going to pull you through. Your support network is going to pull you through. It's going to pull you through getting fired. It's going to pull you through a difficult transition. It's going to pull you through some difficult seasons and some difficult situations. But you're going to learn from those difficult situations, and it's going to be better at the end. Because it's great looking back and all the victories and all the draft picks and all that stuff. Along the way, there were some difficult moments. When I was at Idaho State, I mean, where I was about to live was in a basement that I couldn't even get my couch in. My couch had to sit outside in the snow. It was not very good. And at Philadelphia, my car got broken into, twice. I didn't have the money to fix it. It was just like, so I left the door unlocked. I was like, okay, y'all want to break in my car? Like, just open the door. So there were really, really difficult moments all along the way. But my faith did see me through. So that's what I would say. You're going to start your career, enjoy every bit of it, learn from everything and everybody. But when those difficult moments happen, just trust and believe, rest on your faith, rest on your work ethic, trust your support network, and you'll find a way through.
Well, great, David. Now you said something about writing a book, and I'm praying for you in that venture. I think it'll be a great book. I definitely want to grab me a copy of it. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you've done in your career. I appreciate your leadership, your friendship, and thank you again for coming on. I am positive that the messages and the words that we've shared tonight will help somebody, help a young coach, help a young administrator. And I know, throughout your career as a coach, that's kind of who you've been. So I appreciate you.
My pleasure, my friend. And I appreciate you and all the things that you've done. I know you're working hard for your young men there, but even this podcast, you love to reach out and affect people in a positive way. So I'm glad to take part in that. And I wish you well, my friend.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.